All right, Parker. Well, what's your overall reaction to the budget passing and being signed into law?
I would say my overall reaction is quite positive. I think when you look at some of the wins Republicans were able to get in the state budget, especially with a Democrat governor and a Democrat Senate, I think we saw a lot of really key wins, some policy wins that I think were really, really good. And then also just some general wins in the budget that, this is the second year in a row that we've seen a decrease in state spending in the budget, which I think is a real positive thing for fiscal conservatives. And then you look at some of the policy wins we were able to get, closing the revolving door on legislators becoming lobbyists, putting a 2-year cool down period on that, I think was a very big win. People wanted to see, as well as a bill I was quite excited about, keeping private equity companies from being able to buy up, hundreds of homes in Michigan, and really taking them off the market, converting them into short-term rentals, and so eliminating private equities from being able to do that. We were really excited to see that bill pass too.
So I was going to get into it a little bit later, but you kind of mentioned a term in there, so that guides us into this next question, because there is kind of a back and forth over what the size of the budget is. The speaker, leading the House, Republicans, says the three fiscal agencies in the government agree the budget is smaller than last year. And then you have many media outlets saying the budget is not smaller than last year and it actually is a slight increase. The numbers vary between $75 billion just about and $86 billion just about. Each is also accusing the other of trying to score political points. So what number is correct in your mind? You kind of already alluded to it. And then can you walk us through how you arrive at that number instead of the other?
Sure. And I'm not on the appropriations committee, but I will say when we've got the governor agreeing with us on this and the state budget office, I'm leaning towards taking their word for it a little more. But I think we're under the $80 billion mark for sure in the state budget. There is some negotiation or argument on how some of the pass-through dollars from the federal government are coming down into, and how those are playing into the budget, and if they're being calculated or not. That's a conversation for someone maybe smarter than me to talk about. But in terms of state spend, I think we're for sure under that $80 billion mark.
Any money brought back home to the district?
Yeah, that's one I'm quite excited about. And really late night negotiations right before we passed the budget, I was able to get secured $2.5 million for North Central Michigan College for their dental hygiene program that they'll be starting. And that's really going to fill a huge need here in Northern Michigan. If you look at that specific program, the next closest one is at Ferris State University, so down in Big Rapids. So folks are going to be able to, from the Upper Peninsula in Northern Michigan, come to Petoskey and get an education and have the opportunity to become a dental hygienist and make six-figure wages, which I think is just wonderful. And that's, again, one of the reasons I ran for office, is making sure people who live in Northern Michigan and grow up in Northern Michigan can stay here and make a real living up here. So that one I was excited about. And then 2 capital outlay projects, which really tough negotiations on those, but we were able to get about $3.5 million for North Central Michigan to finish their CTE structure that they're putting in their programming for that. So they're going to have the ability to do HVAC and all of these different career and technical education programs for our students up here. Another big win for Northern Michigan. And then lastly, we got $30 million for Lake Superior State University, also in that realm of career and technical education. for them. So that's going to be a great injection for them to continue to really develop the workforce up here in northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula.
Mentioned the dental hygiene program for the listeners. We are expecting to be joined by the director of the upcoming dental hygiene program at North Central either late this week or early next week. Still working that one out. Be sure to stay tuned to the show to hear that. But you mentioned a couple of different wins for your district as far as getting money, bringing it back home. But when people often still think that Northern Michigan, left out of the budget more so than Southern Michigan. Do you think that was fairly well balanced this go around, that Northern Michigan was well represented monetarily compared to downstate districts?
Yeah, I would say it was more fair. I think when you've got a voice advocating more, and we have a majority chamber in the House, we were able to get some more wins. And I mean, these were really key things for my district that we've been trying to get for, in some cases, 5 or 6 years. I look at the North Central Michigan College's capital outlay. They've been waiting 6 years, being in this number one spot on the capital outlay list for community colleges, and they get passed up time and time again, and we were able to deliver on that. So I would say, yes, we were, and I would say we were also able to get a legislative win, a public act that I had signed into law last week, having to do with housing reform and really reducing regulations in the housing space to hopefully bring the cost of housing down in these new builds, allowing for more development, slightly cheaper rent for occupants. So that was another bill we were able to get signed into law this last week that I had sponsored, which, again, pretty excited about for Northern Michigan and the opportunity for development.
In some cases, a highlight for lawmakers or, kind of the House Republicans or the House Democrats or what have you is not necessarily what's in the budget, but what's not in the budget. Anything that you were glad that was negotiated out?
Yeah, I think there was a few things. I mean, there was a lot of, I would say, pork spending that had the, when you looked at the Senate budget compared to the House budget, that we were able to get out of there. When you look at these $85+ billion budgets, I think that was one that House Republicans were very excited about. A few other items, I would say, when you look at previous budgets in the past and the projects that were getting funded, you look at these Zen centers, yoga centers, splash pads in Southern Michigan. We got all of those cut out, and a lot of that has to do with the House transparency efforts that we have been doing, and making sure that, projects that legislators are willing to sponsor and put their name on, they're under the scrutiny of the public then. They're not backdoor deals happening at the 11th hour of the budgets. And I think that is a really positive thing we were able to see removed, and you won't see in a budget going forward are these shady backdoor deals that tens of millions of dollars or maybe hundreds of millions are getting siphoned or cycled to these nonprofits or these just these bad projects. So I think that's a big win for Michigan as a whole.
I saw up here Michigan's budget and its funding was slashed again. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'm disappointed about that. That's probably one of the ones I was most disappointed about in the budget. I've been a pretty big proponent of Pure Michigan. We're working with stakeholders to try and I think a lot of this is you're having an administration turnover this year, at the end of this year. So I think there's my hope is that going into the next year, we're going to reprioritize Pure Michigan, and I have some ideas for that we're working on right now, to really not rebrand Pure Michigan, but just refocus it on what made the Pure Michigan campaign so great. Because we've gone away. Pure Michigan, the campaign has gone away from really what made that program so great, and I think we need to get back to that, and then you'll see more investment from lawmakers into that program.
What do you say to a constituent who is unhappy that major property tax reform wasn't included this go around?
Yeah, I'm disappointed in property tax not being really brought up. I still think there's time. That's still a priority of the House Republican caucus to see property tax reform, but we know it's such a hurdle having a Democrat Senate and a Democrat governor. So we see the hurdle. I'd say last year in the budget process, we were able to get an extra $2 billion into roads through a roads package deal that House Republicans were able to get. And that was a very, very tough fight. I think we can do it again with property tax, but it's going to take a lot of nuanced negotiation. And I think we can see that start to percolate or start to really show up in September and October towards the end of the year. And of course, we have elections going on, but I do think there's possibility for that to be brought up. Now, if it doesn't by some means, I would say that going into 2027 with a new governor, I think there's a great opportunity there if we can't get it done this year.
Reining in the budget is rarely an overnight thing. It's rarely a one-year thing. And in many cases, with shorter term limits, it's rarely a one-term thing. So what are some early goals for next year's budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know our appropriations team is already looking at next year's budget. I would say that we want to keep reducing the state budget, but I think if we get in a scenario where Republicans get a trifecta and we've got the Senate, House, and governor, I think you're going to see dramatic change in the state budget. I think you may see income tax be reduced. I think you'll see property tax be reduced. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think we've seen the state budget over 8 years grow exponentially from $56 billion up to, let's say, $80 billion right now. That's a huge increase, and you haven't really seen benefit for those dollars being spent more in Michigan. So I think we can strip back some of these spending that we're doing and see that money being returned to our constituents' pockets. I think if Michigan wants to be competitive, which I know the Republican governor candidates are all about that. I think what you're going to see is to make Michigan competitive, we have to make drastic changes to the income tax and property tax, and then you'll start to attract folks back to Michigan.
Final topic for you. It's unfortunately kind of the biggest trending story recently here in northern Michigan. How closely have you been following that BlissFest situation regarding Lon Hartman?
Yeah, I haven't been following it very closely. I've had a few conversations with folks about it. I've seen it. It's very unfortunate. But from my understanding and what we've been hearing is it doesn't sound like there was any sort of hate crime being committed here. So I'm leaving it to the Emmett County Sheriff's Department. I know they're doing a really good job investigating this, but it sounds like no foul play from my understanding.
We are speaking with State Representative Parker Fairbairn. Parker, thank you as always for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.